Your daily dose of sports talk is here. Highlights, interviews, and analysis. From the entertainment capital of the world, SportsWrap with Jason Page starts now.
Welcome to it, this Friday edition of the show. We got a lot to do over the next 60 minutes. Thanks to all of you watching across the U.S. and Canada on over 270 affiliates. Thanks to those of you watching all over the world, potentially on YouTube, listening to us on the SportsWrap with Jason Page podcast. We will be joined by Robert Littal on this Friday edition of the show. He makes his triumphant return after a couple of weeks off for the holidays. Robert Littal, the founder of Black Sports Online, joins us every Friday on the show. Today will be no different. Sam Yarnell joins me coming up in 10 minutes to talk about the College Football Playoff game, the semifinal that we watched last night, which we'll talk about here in the big story in just a couple of seconds. We'll also get into the wild card playoff games, wild card weekend plus, with the games to take place this weekend. Sam and I will pick those coming up for you a little later on in the show. There is news on the GM front for the Miami Dolphins to talk about, and a historic night in the NHL for one veteran player that I didn't even know was still playing. We'll get to that coming up a little later on in the program, too. But we start things out, as we always do, on SportsWrap with the big story. And the big story today is what we watched on Thursday night, and that was a college football playoff for the ages. And when they designed this college football playoff, I would imagine this was the dream scenario that they had in mind. Two teams, Ole Miss and Miami. In the case of Miami, a team that a lot of people didn't even want in these playoffs, playing, a game that went right down to the final minute, with Miami getting the win 31-27. And, Carson Beck in his 7th year in college. We all know the story of him and, leaving Georgia, sort of an amicable parting of the ways. The two sides were kind of had enough of each other and looking for a place to play that final year of his collegiate career, and finding that in Miami and wanting to play for a championship. And this Miami team making this run now with 3 wins in the playoffs, and having an opportunity to play a national championship game at home, 10 days from now, at Hard Rock Stadium, which is pretty amazing. But this was a fascinating game to watch, because at the half, you had Ole Miss only down 17-13, and it felt like they should have been down 27-13 if you actually looked at time of possession, the way that Miami was controlling the game, controlling the clock, playing the game on their terms. You felt like Miami should have been up a lot more. And when it was only 17-13 at the break, I said to myself, this may not go the way that Miami's hoping for. Ole Miss, we saw what they did last week in their win against Georgia, where they were down by 9 points at the half and came back in the second half. And in the fourth quarter of this game, lo and behold, Ole Miss found that next gear. And you have the teams exchanging leads back and forth. And Miami could have had a bigger lead in this game. They had 3 interceptions, basically, that they dropped. I mean, basically right in their laps, that they dropped courtesy of Trinidad Chambliss, who still played pretty well in this game. But they had opportunities to make this an even bigger lead. Then they throw it. Carson Beck has a tipped pass, interception, where they're going to get at least 3 points on that drive. Instead, the pass is intercepted on the tip, and Ole Miss goes down the other way and gets 3. So that's a 6-point swing right there. The final score in this game may not have even been indicative of how well Miami played, and the fact that they probably could have won this game by 10 or more. And that's no disrespect to Ole Miss, who's done an amazing job getting to where they are. I was rooting for them. Not rooting against Miami, let me make that clear, but rooting for Ole Miss in this game. But now you look at Miami, and are you really going to pick against them? No matter who they play, Indiana or Oregon, when it's basically going to be a home game for them in Miami. They don't have to worry about their fans traveling. They're going to scoop up as many of those tickets as possible. This team hasn't played a home game since mid-November. and now they're going to have an opportunity to play the national championship game on their home field, 10 days from now. I wouldn't pick against them. Now, depending on the odds that you look at right now, I think they're like a 5.5-point underdog in a hypothetical matchup against Indiana. And I think it's 1.5 or 2.5 if they play against Oregon. This is a team that found themselves. This is a team that kind of went through the fire, and I think all the criticism that they had to deal with and shutting all of that out. Mario Cristobal was almost out of a job a year ago. And now here he is with an opportunity to coach for a national championship. This is why you have a playoff. This is why you have a 12-team playoff. And hopefully, eventually, even maybe a 16-game team playoff. Because there's enough teams in college football that can win a national championship. And you're finding that out. This Miami team that barely got in by the skin of their teeth with a chance to win a national championship. Can I do a quick second big story? I just want to say, in a time where people are saying and doing the wrong things, constantly in media, if you watch news networks, I'm not going to get overly political here. I want to say hats off to the Minnesota Timberwolves. Last night, they had a moment of silence for Renee Good, the mother of three, 37-year-old woman that was gunned down in an incident with ICE in Minneapolis this week. It happened on Wednesday, and no doubt by now, if you're watching me and you're watching television and you're not living in a cave, you've heard about this story by now. I'm not going to get into the finger pointing and the blaming of who did what and how we got to this point. But I think the Minnesota Timberwolves did something last night that I think not enough people are doing right now in society, and that was they played to our humanity. No matter what you think about what transpired and what's going on with ICE raids in some of these bigger cities and the way the protesters are conducting themselves, the one thing that we could all agree upon and should be able to agree upon is the fact that Renee Good was a 37-year-old mother of three who's no longer with us, that three kids have lost their mother, that parents have lost a daughter, and that it didn't need to happen. No matter what you think about any of this, we should all be able to agree upon the fact that woman should still be alive. And the Minnesota Timberwolves taking just a couple of moments last night to acknowledge that, it plays to the best of us in a time where we're not doing that enough. We're going to come back, talk some college football, the semifinal game last night. Sam Yarnell is here. Welcome back to the show. Talked about it in the big story. Let's expand upon it a bit more now. Miami's stirring 31-27 win over Ole Miss. Verbo Fiesta Bowl. Sam Yarnell. Hell of a game between these two teams. And I won't lie, I was rooting for Ole Miss. I wasn't rooting against Miami, but I was rooting for Ole Miss because of everything they've sort of had to endure here, especially late in the season. The Trinidad Chambliss story, which is fantastic. But Miami earned this. And quite frankly, as close as the score was, Ole Miss was really fortunate to be in a position late in this game to still have a chance to win, considering Chambliss could have easily been picked 3 times by Miami. And the Hurricanes, I think at the end of the day, were the better team. And this is where, look, I was not a believer in Carson Beck. Anybody who's listened to this show can figure that out. I have not been a believer in the idea that you were going to win a national championship with Carson Beck. But the guy's playing in his 7th year of college football. He has as much experience as anybody, and this is that moment where that experience obviously came to help him in a big way.
Yeah, I was very interested, Jason, to see what the narratives are going to be around Carson Beck this morning because, there's always that chance when you have a game like this and a quarterback like Carson Beck, quite frankly, that you wake up on Friday morning and people are talking about Carson Beck's draft stock. And oh my gosh, is this guy going to go in the first round? Thank goodness they're not. I mean, my gosh, what more did he have to do to prove, even in that game alone, that he's not an NFL talent? To me, Jason, this game, it was sad. It was sad for Ole Miss because it felt like everything kind of finally caught up to them. It felt like they had been able to push away the narrative of, oh, our coach left and, half our team might be gone. And, they even went as far as to fight back against it over the course of the last, I don't know, call it 8 days, 9 days leading into that game last night, between beating Georgia, getting Trinidad Chambliss to recommit pending his eligibility waiver, right? Getting
Lacey,
Kawan Lacey to come back to this team. It felt like nothing was ever going to catch up to them. And then it all finally did. It finally felt like they weren't playing a synchronous offense. It felt like Charlie Weiss Jr. may have spent the last few days talking to, his next employer rather than his current one. It felt like some of these guys, with the transfer portal being open, and this being the first game with the transfer portal being open, it felt like some of the players on the field maybe had that in the back of their mind, Jason. And, we can talk until the cows come home about the problems with college football, and the schedule's a mess with the transfer portal being open while you've still got games actively going on. But here's the deal. At the end of the day, looking back on that game last night, it feels like that's what happened to Ole Miss. Miami did not, by any stretch of the imagination, feel like some world-beating, quite frankly, national championship-worthy team in that game last night.
I think you're getting short shrift to Miami. Look, I get you can point to the 2 losses they had this year. The loss to SMU late in the year or later in the year. Carson Beck throwing some interceptions. Sometimes teams get better as you go through a season. Sometimes teams come together as you go through a season. And I'm starting to believe, I know, I'm going to be the sucker that's saying I'm starting to believe in Miami a little bit. That, regardless of who they play in this national championship game, they're not going to get steamrolled. They're not getting steamrolled by Indiana or Oregon in this championship game next week, Sam. Or 11 days from now.
I just don't know, because as much as people talk about the recency of Miami and all this winning, right, they so eloquently forget that this is a team that didn't cover against Virginia Tech and quite frankly struggled with Virginia Tech for 3 quarters. They lost to SMU. Yes. They didn't win their conference. And then you look at their college football playoff wins, right? Because if they've got nothing left, at least they've got their college football playoff wins. Well, turns out you beat Ohio State, who everyone's kind of realized in the weeks since. Ohio State was never as good as they were last year, or as good as we pretended them to be.
They were a big dog in that game, though.
And then you beat an Ole Miss team whose, again, coach was already gone, on their defensive coordinator for the game. It's so hard. It's hard for a college football team even to be in the position that Miami's in, where they keep winning these games, but somehow still can't make their resume better.
I think, as I watch, I think the one thing they have on their side, and this is the beauty of football, basketball's got a 24-second shot clock. Baseball, it's 3 outs. Hockey is what it is. Football, you can shorten games dramatically. And the way they know their identity. This is a team that understands who they are. In some of these games early in this postseason, I was critical of the fact that they were unwilling to put the ball in Carson Beck's hands and allowing him to make plays. Last night they did that when they needed to, but they also knew enough about who they were to say, you know what, we're going to rely on running the football. They had how many lengthy drives, how many 13 to 15 play drives did they have in this game, which dramatically shortens the game, which keeps the other team's offense on the sideline. In some cases, as good as their defense was at times, their offense was their best defense because it kept Ole Miss and that potent offense off the field, which put a lot more pressure on Ole Miss when they were on the field to move the football. And for 3 quarters, Ole Miss didn't do a heck of a lot in terms of moving the football. And then obviously the 4th quarter we get all the fireworks. I think it's going to be close. I think what Cristobal's done, and look, this is a guy they wanted to run out of town just a couple of years into this process of trying to revitalize Miami football. I think no matter who they play next week, you're gonna get a good game. You think Indiana? If it's Indiana, Indiana's gonna roll over them.
Oh, I do think Indiana would roll over them.
5.5
Oregon,
points.
It gets a little more interesting. I'd be more inclined to just bet the over in that game. But here's what I'll tell you to your point, Jason, right? In that game yesterday, Miami had more than twice as much possession as Ole Miss did. In a game as close as this game was, for Ole Miss to be outpossessed 41 minutes to 18,
it's amazing.
It's incredible. Now, the other side of that is it speaks to Miami, where how is the game that close when you outpossess them by that long? But again, if they're going to play that brand of football, they might be able to beat anyone.
They should have had easily. They had 3 really good opportunities to pick off Chambliss in that game. I hope Chambliss. I think one more year in college for Chambliss at that Ole Miss level will do him good. So I do hope he gets that one more year before heading to the NFL. I can't wait to watch him on Sundays in the NFL, though. All right, we got more to do. Robert Littall's going to join us coming up in a couple of minutes. Talk about the top stories of the week with him. Sam returns later. Welcome back to this Friday edition of the show from our studios in Las Vegas, Nevada. Robert Littall normally joins us every Friday on the show. I haven't seen him forever because the last 2 weeks he has been off because we've been running the best of 2025 edition of the show, which we do during the holidays. So I haven't seen his face forever. And there he is, the one and only Robert Littall.
Do I look older? Because, I passed another year. So I feel like there's more gray hair now that I've had another birthday.
Well, the gray in the beard is definitely the giveaway. I've thought about coloring mine, but your
hairline still is good, though.
Yeah, see, you're good on the hair. You don't have to worry about that. LeBron, though, did you see what LeBron did? He practically almost gave it up. He practically gave it up. I know. I was like, what is going on?
He also gave up playing back-to-backs in defense.
And he's almost the same age as you, and he's still playing in the NBA, which is pretty amazing. Robert Littall, happy 50th birthday to you, sir. I've said I am stopping at 49 and 364 days. I will not turn 50. I'm going to remain young and beautiful forever. I want to get your thoughts on this game last night because I've become a believer in Miami. I wasn't throughout this entire playoff run. I'm not a Carson Beck guy. When you asked me, not you, but when people asked me about this game last night and previewing it, I trusted Trinidad Chambliss more. And it's not that Chambliss didn't play well. It's that Carson Beck did exactly what that team requires him to do. Their ability to shorten games with longer sustained drives. And frankly, they won 31-27, and it could have been even bigger if they had grabbed a couple of interceptions that Chambliss sort of, wrapped up for them. Do you give Miami a chance? Are you as much of a believer in them as I am, no matter who they play, whether it's Indiana or Oregon?
Yeah, I think they should be favored.
Wow.
I think you cannot underestimate being hot going into the playoffs. And I feel like this is something that college football has lacked for so many years because there was such a big space between the end of the regular season and the bowl season. And it was just kind of a one and done type of situation. It was one game, anything can happen. With a playoff system, you need momentum and you need belief. And once you kind of start rolling, and we've seen it in the NFL, we've seen it in the NBA, we've seen it in college basketball. Once you start rolling and you really start to believe, all of a sudden all the little breaks start going your way. It's 3rd and 6 and you make 7. A guy gets supposed to get tackled for a 3-yard loss and he turns it into all those little breaks are starting to go toward Miami. Against Ohio State, Tony gets lit up and fumbles and the ball bounces right back to him. When I see stuff like that, I start to think that, hey, maybe these guys are destined to win a national championship.
And what does it say? That a lot of people didn't even think this team belonged in the playoffs. And I know some people are going to say, see, Notre Dame, you didn't belong. That's not necessarily true either. Notre Dame may have very well belonged. But the argument now that Miami didn't belong in this playoff, it kind of goes by the wayside. And I talked about this earlier in the show with Sam, and I'll say it to you. You know, teams grow, teams mature, teams rally around one another and sort of figure out their identity. And it feels like right before this postseason started, Mario Cristobal and this team, they sort of figured out what their identity was.
Yeah, I think what it is I think in today's college football, thanks to NIL and the transfer portal, you have 12, you have 12 teams that could definitely win the national championship. Maybe even 16. At that. I think the problem was, you take those G5 guys and that pushes out 2 of the major players. If you just took the 12, main teams in college football, I think all of them, including Notre Dame, I think Texas, might have had a shot. It's not so much that I think the issue is that if you get in the playoffs, and I think no matter what conference you're in, as we see, because the SEC is not going to win a championship again in the playoffs, you can win. And I think they just needed the opportunity, and I think they wanted to prove people, wrong and prove the committee right, and so far they're doing so.
Yep, Mario Cristobal, only focused on going 1-0. Trinidad Chambliss, look, he comes up short. He's looking for another year of eligibility. I hope he gets it because I think one more year of grooming in college football at the major level that is the SEC is going to do wonders for him.
Yeah, I disagree.
Really? You think he's ready now for the NFL?
No, it's not. What I think is that you don't want to take a shot coming back and ending up like Nussmeier or Cabe Klubik. You don't want to come back and you're already 24, 25 years old. You don't want to be 26 years old having a bad year. And then you're going into what I would consider a stronger QB class in 2027. When right now, if he came out right now, there would be debate if he is. Would you take him over Ty Simpson? I would.
Yes, I would.
And Ty Simpson is being, mocked in late first round. So I think you have to strike while the iron is hot. And honestly, and the other thing is, I just don't like the quarterbacks that have been in college for 6 years. I think that's really unfair. When you got freshmen and sophomores that are playing quarterback, and a guy that's almost our age playing quarterback, I don't think that's fair.
Give me a winner in Indiana and Oregon.
Like Oregon to pull the upset. I think a little bit too. I like Indiana. I like Cignetti. I think maybe the Kool-Aid has been drank a little bit too much. And I like that Dan Lanning is kind of going under the radar. I like Oregon in a close game. I think it'll be close, but I like Oregon, and then we get Miami and Oregon, an old school championship match.
And how about the idea that Miami gets to go play on their home field? They haven't played a game in Miami since November.
After playing all of the games to begin the season, and it's very funny, like that. I'm curious how that turns out because everybody always talks about it. Miami doesn't have fans that travel. Well, look, they don't have to travel now.
No, they absolutely do not have to travel. What did you make of the Damon Williams situation? Because we talked about it. We're talking about it at the end of the show today, but I want to get your thoughts real fast on this. He goes into the transfer portal. Now he comes back out. He has this deal. What did you make of the way that whole thing played out? Was he just getting bad advice?
Yeah, I think these agents are out of control. I mean, there's something like 4,000 kids in the transfer portal. There's not 4,000 spots, available. Me covering Ohio State, I see kids that used to be able to wait, a year or two that are getting impatient after their freshman year just to leave. And not just impatient to leave, they're impatient because somebody's telling them, hey, you only had 6 catches last year, but I give you $1 million to come to my school. What are those kids are supposed to do? So it's the wild, wild west. And I don't have a problem with kids having the freedom, but we need some sort of guardrails in place.
Robert Littal, the founder of Black Sports Online, hanging out with us. I got to ask him about some of these coaching moves that we've seen this week and also get his thoughts on Trae Young being moved, one of the big first NBA trades of this season. That's next. One more segment with the great Robert Littal, the founder of Black Sports Online, making his triumphant return to the show after a couple of weeks in exile. Surprised he came after Ohio State lost.
Oh, the pain.
The pain! And celebrating his 50th birthday as well. So congratulations to Robert on being half a century old. So Robert Littal, I want to get your thoughts, first of all, on some of the craziness we've seen in the coaching world in the NFL, with John Harbaugh being let go. It could have just as easily been Mike Tomlin if Tyler Loop, hits a field goal. Although I'm now convinced the Steelers are the only way that Mike Tomlin's leaving that team is in a box, because he's going to be there until he feels like leaving at this point, especially now that they won a division. What was the most surprising part of everything that transpired this week to you? Was it Harbaugh?
I don't think anything was really surprising. We've been talking about John Harbaugh and, like you said, Mike Tomlin for a while now. And I think, I hate to equate it to a marriage because it should be to death do his part. But after 18 years, sometimes your message could get a little, stale. The spaghetti could be, a little bland, after a while. And it's not that I think that John Harbaugh is a bad coach. Obviously he isn't, because he's getting a bunch of interviews and can pretty much pick his job. I think for that team, though, it was 100% a Tony Dungy, John Gruden situation that is happening here. They need a totally different guy to come in and put a fire under them, while they still have Lamar Jackson, when healthy, still one of he's still the MVP when healthy. You probably, because he's a dual threat quarterback, and I don't think these dual threat quarterbacks can play 20 years like Brady and Manning in them, you probably got 5 years to kind of maximize this out. And that goes for Mahomes and Allen, who, you're already starting to see the bodies starting to break down on these guys. And you've seen it with McNair, and you saw it, with Donovan McNabb, and you've seen it with Cam Newton. They got to maximize now. So I felt like they had to strike while the iron is hot.
Yeah, because, certain quarterbacks can evolve. Like Steve Young evolved from a quarterback that could run the football and throw second to being a guy that can evolve into a passer. Lamar Jackson's not going to be that guy. I think, once Lamar Jackson loses the ability to really extend plays and run around and make plays with his legs, I think he's gonna struggle. I think the decline. I think it's gonna go fast.
I feel like even like Patrick Mahomes, who guaranteed Hall of Famer, as if you see when those they get nicked up, and they're not as good as quarterbacks because they can't make the magic as much. And I think you're going to see the same thing with Josh Allen, and then pretty much any other Jaden Daniels you saw in the early part of his career. These guys need their legs. It's part of it's part of what makes them dangerous. So you have a shorter period of time to maximize that. So if you're Josh Allen, you got to win the Super Bowl this year. It's right there for you.
Where do you think the biggest surprise is potentially this weekend in Wild Card Weekend?
I can see the Panthers making an upset. I mean,
Sam feels the same way. Sam feels the same way.
Why can't they beat them again? I think I looked at the spread, and every other one is around 3 points. Yeah. So everybody is kind of even. They're saying I can see the Chargers
winning
making
in New England.
A spot there. I can see the Bills. I can see all the underdogs winning. Or at least having a shot to win. So I wouldn't be surprised out of the games if half of them, the road team won.
Yeah, Panthers, by the way, getting 10.5.
Get 10.
At home against the Rams. It's crazy. I know.
They can beat them. They beat them.
Yeah, I know. We're going to do our picks later, but I kind of like the Rams in that spot as far as the points are concerned. Trae Young on the move from Atlanta to Washington to go to the Wizards, and he wanted to go there. Like most people have to be, have a bag put over their head, a burlap sack put over their head, and dragged to Washington kicking and screaming. He wanted to go there, Robert.
Yeah, it's odd. They say he's maybe not going to play so they can protect their draft pick and then come back, at 27, 28 and be back. It's a weird situation. No first round picks, just a couple of players. Like Trae Young, I mean, Trae Young and Luka Doncic not being on the teams that drafted him seems unfathomable. But it happened. And I mean, I don't know what his stock is, right now, because it feels like we may be getting in a situation where it just goes doo, and he just kind of falls, off the map. Because what if he gets there and he just is never, the same. And he was traded for nothing, a bag of Doritos. It's just a very odd situation. And and if you're healthy, why don't you want to play? You don't want to win. I mean, shouldn't the NBA step in and that? It's just very odd.
Can I just say something on the NBA, and I want to see your reaction to this. I think the Lakers are like 23-12, something like that on the season. they might be the biggest fraudulent 23-12 team ever, because if they play anybody younger and athletic, like we've seen with the Spurs, like we saw happen against the Pistons a week or so ago, they can't compete with those teams.
Old and slow.
Can't play defense.
You're old and slow, and it'll get exposed in the playoffs like it did last year. They have to move when LeBron retires, and they can properly put a team around Luka and Austin Reeves. Then that's when they will be in contention. I think as long as LeBron is getting minutes, even though it's not like he's terrible or anything.
No,
it just doesn't work. And I at his age, and I this is like when Kobe got old and everybody else. If you don't really take a super back seat, it just doesn't work.
No, it doesn't. And I'm absolutely. And I said this a week or so ago. I hope this is LeBron's last season, because I don't want to see the decline.
Yeah.
You know, I don't want to see the decline. And I'm watching him play right now, Robert, in the final 20 seconds I have. He still has long spurts and flashes of vintage LeBron, and it's great. But yeah, he's not playing defense, and that's a big part of the problem for sort of what the Lakers are. And I don't want to see him be like a 15-minute-a-night guy. He's not going to do that. I just want to see him leave and exit the stage at the highest level.
Yeah, I understand. So yeah, that's not a problem at all. So I mean, it's I think he wants the retirement tour, but yeah, it's gonna be interesting.
Robert, always appreciate it, my friend. Have a great weekend. We wrap it up with some odds and ends 10 minutes from now, and some news on the Dolphins GM search to get to. But it's week 19 in the NFL. It's wild card weekend in the NFL. Sam Yarnell. Normally we do Page versus the Prince in the final segment of the show. I have forsaken that for this week because we got a lot of games to get to, and Page versus the Prince is a very short segment. We're going to pick them all today with Wild Card Weekend Plus getting underway in these NFL playoffs. We had Nick Ferguson actually do this on the show, which we aired yesterday, and pick all the games. So Sam Yarnell, let's run through them. We'll go through each game and see where we fall on this Wild Card Weekend action. You can give your pick, and then I'll give mine, and we'll just go back and forth and run through these and see where we wind up. So we begin it in Carolina. The Panthers at home against the Rams. It is Carolina plus 10.5. Plus 480, by the way, on the money line if you're looking for some value there. And under 46.5 is the total on this game. Tell me what you like.
This is, weirdly enough, the one I struggle with the most. I think I'm going to land on the Rams win the game, but the Panthers cover. This feels to me like that game that we get every wild card weekend where like the upset is it has the most potential and is the least obvious, but it would not fool me. It would not surprise me, I should say, if the Rams are that team this year. They get to the first round of the playoffs and throw up all over themselves, and the Panthers get on to the next round. I like the Rams to win. I like the Panthers to cover. This is a game I flip-flopped on all week long.
I would be surprised if the Rams lost. I do think they win. I think your initial thought on this game is accurate in that I think the Rams win, but the Panthers cover. And I could see a backdoor cover here. You get a 2-touchdown lead, maybe a 14-point game. Panthers get a garbage touchdown late. We got to survive an onside kick, that sort of thing. But I am more of a believer in the Rams than most. I picked them to win the Super Bowl, so obviously I'm going to ride that baby until she bucks. But I will take the Rams. I will take the Panthers to cover. I like the Rams to win the game. Packers in Chicago to take on the Bears. Game 2 on Saturday. The Bears plus 1.5. 44.5 is the total. The Bears still not getting the respects from the books, Sam.
And they're not getting the respect from the public either. Public's all over. It feels like the public's all over Green Bay in this game. Obviously, too early to tell right now. But, Jason, I'm going to take the Bears. I'll fade the public here. I don't love it, but I trust it. I'll trust Caleb Williams at home.
I'm with you. We are in agreement again. This is never a good sign when we are in agreement. I like the Bears as well, plus the 1.5. 102 on the money line. I like them to win the game outright, and I do think it's a low-scoring game. The Bills and the Jaguars, the first game on Sunday in Jacksonville. The Jags plus 1.5. The total is 51.5, Sam.
I'm going to take the Bills here. Listen, I know that historically, and you have to go a long way back to the pre-Josh Allen days for this, but the Bills have struggled the last 2 times they've played in Jacksonville. The last couple times they've played Jacksonville have been in London and Buffalo, so those don't count during Josh Allen's career. But if you look at when the Bills go to Jacksonville, they do struggle, and I could see the Jaguars winning. If this spread were higher, if we were looking at a 2.5 or a 3.5 on Jacksonville, I would almost bet the Jags in this situation. The line's just a little too short for me to get all the way there. I think the Bills win this game. I don't know how comfortably they win this game, but it just feels like the Jaguars aren't quite ready yet. I'm not saying that they're a bad team, but they're just not quite ready yet.
You rarely hear me reference, betting certain amounts of units on games. This would be like a 1/10 of a unit bet. I do not like this game at all. I would not touch it. But if you force me to touch it with your money, Sam, I will take Buffalo. But I am not a big believer in either of these teams come Sunday in this matchup. 51.5 is a big number. Yes, real quick.
Note on this game.
Yes.
Our friend Ross Tucker said this morning that he thinks the winner of this game is going to the Super Bowl. He thinks this is the AFC Championship game.
Good luck with that. 49ers and Eagles, 4.5 to Philadelphia. 44.5 is the total. Sam, what do you like?
This is a number that is dropping on Philadelphia. Get the 5.5s while you can. They're probably all 4.5s by the time you're watching this. I'm going to ride with the Niners, but I'm going to only ride with the Niners because I'm our resident agent of chaos. And if the Niners win this game, Nick Sirianni's out, and I think I want him in Buffalo.
All right. I will go with the Eagles as well, minus 4.5. I think the Niners have done an amazing job to get to this point. I just don't know if they can get across the finish line. They've been so banged up throughout the season. Chargers plus 3.5 in New England against the Patriots. I have a feeling I know where you're going.
Yeah, it's pretty easy in this one. I'm going to take the Chargers. It comes down to coaching. I know Jim Harbaugh, is going to have a vengeance out for his brother's firing, and he's going to run laps around Mike Vrabel. We've seen what happened when Mike Vrabel gets out coached. It doesn't end well for the Patriots. Give me the Chargers.
And I'm actually with you on this one. I like the Chargers. We are in agreement way too much for this to go well. I will take the Chargers plus the 3.5 as well. I have not been a believer in this Patriots team either. Texans minus 3 on Monday. Texans minus 3 in Pittsburgh against the Steelers. 38.5 the total.
Now I've got the weekend to decide, so I'll let you know next week.
I think I'm going to kind of ride old Mo. I'm probably going to take the Steelers in that game. But we
Me
can talk
too.
About it.
Gosh darn it.
Yeah,
Oh no, this is not good.
I know. We'll talk about it on Monday. We'll talk about odds and ends. The Dolphins search for a general manager is over. That didn't take long. Just about time to put the wraps on this baby for a Friday. A few reminders for you. If you haven't done so already, make sure to subscribe to the SportsWrap with Jason Page podcast. It's available on all your favorite podcasting platforms. 45 minutes, audio version only. Available Monday through Friday, as I said, on your favorite podcasting platforms. Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube Podcasts, iHeartRadio, TuneIn, Odyssey, Amazon. Anywhere you get a podcast, you can get this show Monday through Friday in its audio form. In addition, we have the Sports Wrap with Jason Page YouTube channel. This is your go-to place for all things Sports Wrap. We have the Monday through Friday TV version of the show that is there, and you can often watch it there before you can watch it anywhere else. So that is one of the big perks of subscribing to our YouTube channel. In addition, we have SportsWrap shorts. Whenever news breaks, whenever there's a big story, a big game, we've got it covered with SportsWrap shorts. So you don't even have to wait until the next day to watch us on television. You can get SportsWrap shorts over on our YouTube channel. They're 1 to 3 minutes long, quick hitters, built for the way people consume media these days. SportsWrap shorts also available on our TikTok, SportsWrap Jason Page, and on our Instagram, you guessed it, SportsWrap Jason Page. Also, don't forget to check us out on the weekends. We have a 30-minute weekend edition of SportsWrap that airs across many of these same affiliates. If not, check your local listing for time and schedule. It could be on a sister station within your market as well. And without any further delay, ladies and gentlemen, on this Friday edition of the show, time for some odds. There it is. And ends. Odds and ends, Sam Yarnell. We've got ourselves a general manager for the Miami Dolphins. Who is it?
It's John Eric Sullivan from the Green Bay Packers, Jason. He's spent a couple of years as the vice president of player personnel. And I'll just get into this.
Why do you look perplexed?
It's a head-scratching move. Beyond head-scratching. I'm confused because, obviously, did my due diligence. Feels like nobody can say a bad thing about this guy. He's apparently one of the most widely respected young minds in NFL front offices. But then I went and looked at his resume. And this is a guy who was promoted to this role, VP of Player Personnel, in 2022 in Green Bay. And that's when I made the connection. What happened in 2022 in Green Bay? Oh yeah, that's right. That's the year that Aaron Rodgers ended up on the outs with the team. They were under 500. He walked the season after, right? So then I got further into this guy's resume as a player personnel guy. You'd think that there would be leaps and bounds made in this roster, right? Wrong. All they did was trade what? It was essentially Aaron Jones for Josh Jacobs at the same production level. Big signings included guys like A.J. Dillon. I don't think he's even in the league anymore. This is a very confusing move in terms of the Miami Dolphins, but then again, I say that, Jason, and it's like contradictory to myself, right? It's exactly the move we should have expected Stephen Ross and the Miami Dolphins to make, right? The one that made no sense, that you're just making because everyone's telling you to. Same as the Mike McDaniel hire, honestly.
They brought in Troy Aikman to help with that GM search, and I guess that's what they wind up going with. Damon Williams Jr. staying at Washington just a couple of days after announcing he was going back into the transfer portal after signing a deal with the team that is said to be in the mid $4 million range for 2026. Damon Williams says, you know what? Forget all that transfer portal stuff. I'm going back to Washington. Okay.
So let's run through a quick timeline of Thursday's events.
His agent
in the Damon Williams
too.
development.
Yeah.
Thursday morning, there's publications coming out saying that Damon Williams is facing serious legal trouble. This may end his entire career. Thursday at 12:53 p.m. Eastern, a tweet is sent out from Darren Heitner. I have been retained as legal counsel for Damon Williams Jr. We have no public comment at this time. Updates will be provided as appropriate. The very next tweet from this guy who is brought in as counsel for Damon Williams Jr. is Damon Williams announcing that he is returning to the University of Washington. If you need to, go back and replay it, because I was exactly right. When you mess with the man, when you mess with a state-funded institution, it never works out well. Good job, Damon Williams. You put smart people in the right place and realized you were staring down the barrel of the end of your career.
Patrick Kane in the NHL. You know, in this day where we're talking about Alexander Ovechkin and 900 goals, this number will seem rather paltry, but it's really not. Patrick Kane became the 50th player in NHL history last night to hit 500 goals in his career. Hit an empty netter. It was his second of the night. Red Wings beat the Canucks 5-1. By the way, Red Wings have been a big surprise in the NHL this year, having a really nice season. But Patrick Kane, congratulations to him. Good to see an American-born player as well doing some special things. 37 years old.
I'm sure there are some viewers out there sitting here thinking to themselves, Patrick Kane, the guy from the Blackhawks,
Yes,
he's
that's
still
exactly
playing in the NHL?
I'm not going to lie,
yeah,
Sam.
He's still playing for the Red Wings, folks.
Sam.
Buffalo, New York's own.
Sam, not going to lie. I had no idea he was still in the league. Dennis Bernstein would absolutely flog me for admitting that, but I had no idea he was still in the league. Nope. It's going to do it for us. Have a great weekend. Enjoy the wild card weekend action. Sam, thanks to you as always. Thanks to Robert Lital. Thanks to all of you at home for watching. I'm Jason Page. See you back here on Monday for another edition of Sports Wrap, or this weekend for Sports Wrap Weekend Edition.